what if we were just real, right? Like, what if we just jumped on the phone and made a phone call, right? Like, and we didn't, there's all these feelings, right? Like, oh no, they're leaving. Should I call them? Oh, I did something wrong. There's all these feelings, but I remember it was Doctor. We'll call him Dr. Johnson just for safety. Dr. Johnson had told me, in fact, this story is really interesting. When he first came in, he and his wife, I said, hey, in an ideal world, how often would you hear from me? And he said, well, in an ideal world, I'd never hear from you, right? Like you just handle the money and we wouldn't ever hear from you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I kind of took him at his word. We got it all invested. You got everything right. That like 9 to 12 months of early relationships, everything solid. And then I was like, we didn't talk much. And then one day I walked in and there was transfer paperwork. And I won't mention the name of the firm, but I was like, no way am I letting Dr. Johnson go anywhere, let alone there. So I was like, I just called him. And it was a scary phone call because there's all these feelings, right? Like fear of failure and confrontation. I just called him. I was like, Dr. Johnson, what in the world? Like, I thought, what? And he was like, we're not talking about this today, but the funny part of the story is he said, Carl, I never hear from you. And I said, well, you told me.
You told me not to call you.
I did actually tell him that. I said, well, wait, for my notes, you said that was the ideal thing. And he's like, yeah, but we're not there yet. Like, I just said, listen, if this is about being closer, I totally get it. If it's about a personality issue, totally get it. Let me help you find a home. Right? Like, but I'm sorry, I can't let you go there, which will go unnamed. I can't let you go there. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, oh, I'm just not going to allow it. And he's like, can you do that? And I said, no, but I'm going to. And he was like, really? And I said, no, I care too much about you. So let's figure out what the problem was. And if I'm not a good fit, let me help you find a good solution. And so I said, what was the problem? And then we got into that whole, you never called me. And I had to explain to him, like, well, you told me. He ended up canceling the transfer and staying. So I think this idea, just like jump on the phone, not an email. I just think there's not enough emotional context. Jump on the phone and say, what's up? Dr. Johnson, I thought, like, what did I miss? And here's a couple of phrases that I've always found really valuable. One is, I love this phrase. Would you extend me the professional courtesy? Just walking me through what happened, right? Like, and again, I may or may not try to talk you into staying. If I do, it's only because I really like you. But I would also could you extend me the professional courtesy of just explaining what happened so that we can fix that problem in the future? Because I thought things were going well. It's obvious that you thought differently.
Right.
Just get on the phone and have the call, right? And if you're sincere about, if you truly believe that you only want clients that are mutually beneficial, you to them and them to you, and you've got a limited number of seats anyway, if you come at it, even if you're not in that position, if you come at it with that belief, so it doesn't sound desperate or anxious or defensive. Instead, it's like, hey, I just want to explore what happened here. Right. And if you'll allow me, I'll either fix it or I'll help find you a home. If that's the honest, like, you got to get that hat on, like, square, right? Like, if that's the honest intent, only good things will happen. And the worst case scenario in my mind is you help them find a new home. You've got a fan, you have somebody who feels good. If you run into them in the grocery store, everything's good, right? Like, and the best thing that could happen is what happened with Dr. Johnson. He just said, oh, forget it, Carl. I didn't know you were doing all this stuff. Maybe you should tell people more often. That's when the 17-point wealth management audit got developed, was when I realized, like, wait, we weren't communicating all the things we were doing for Dr. Johnson. Greetings, Carl here. Now, that little clip you just watched of Michael Kitces and I, that's from our podcast, Kitces and Carl. And I love those conversations. But did you know, this is sort of a secret, but did you know that there's another conversation? I have another conversation every month. It's a private conversation that you can only hear in my membership program at the Society of Advice. It's called the membership. So here's the deal. I invite one of my favorite people every month. I actually kind of refer to it as Carl talks to smart people. So I invite a really smart, impactful person. Sometimes these are really well-known authors and thinkers. Sometimes it's obscure people you'll never have heard of, but I promise you will be massively insightful. And I invite them to have a conversation with me about 3 things. Number 1, the craft of advice. And remember, these are almost always people from outside the financial services industry. So how to give better advice. Number 2, how to do meaningful work, often in public, because that's kind of hard, a little bit scary, right? And number 3, how to be a better human, because I believe if we want to be better advisors, the best way to start is be better humans, right? So you're invited to that conversation every month. It's 90 minutes, dedicated space on your calendar to think about the impact you want to make. Because I don't know if you get that very often, but I hardly ever get time to think about the impact because I'm so busy doing the things, right? So that's what the membership is. People love it. And you know what? I don't think you should take my word for it. I think you should try. I have an idea. Let's do a free trial. 7-day free trial. There's a link. Just click the link and start your 7-day free trial to see what I'm talking about. Thanks, my friend.